डोर क्लोज कर देना। विजिबल है? नहीं आ रहा, इसमें तो कुछ नहीं देगा। यहाँ पे तो गो लाइव हो चुका। Hello everyone. Am I audible? Can somebody please type? Okay. So okay, I think so. I'm audible also and visible also now. And good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Neha Gupta from Giggles Clinics and my own space. And today we are going to talk about addressing sensory issues at home. So it's a huge and a very vast topic, and I'll try to sum it up in a short while so as to give you an idea about what all the sensory issues are, what is the sensory system, what all senses are covered, what problems our kids face due to these sensory issues, and how are we going to tackle it. So before we start, I would like to clear the intent of this webinar that it is not meant for any formal workshop or something, but it is to increase the knowledge of the parents so that they understand the sensory system clearly and work and identify the issue and address it. And in the next 1 hour, there will be a request from my side that I just want you to take off your child off the mind and just think of yourself and analyze your sensory system. Once you do that, it will be very easy for you to understand what your child is undergoing. Okay, and one more thing, if you whenever you put up a query, make sure that you add the age of the child. So let's begin. So first of all, we will be talking about what is the sensory system. Sensory system is basically a part of nervous system responsible for processing sensory information. So if we think of it, we are only reacting to whatever is happening to our body, whatever stimulus our body is getting, and we are reacting to it. So the system comprises of receiving the input through the receptors, sending it to the brain, processing it in the brain, and then sending an output so that our motor system can work and react accordingly. The senses are transducers from the physical world to the realm of the mind, where we interpret the information, creating our perception of the world around. Sensory system. Broadly speaking, sensory system has three main roles. One is homeostasis, that is maintaining a balanced environment within the body so that we can function properly. Second is to synchronize the activities with our with our fellow members or the people of our same species, and to act in synchrony, to act together as a whole. And the third is to locate and respond to the dangers around us so that we perceive that this particular thing is a threat to me, this particular thing is a danger to me. So these are the prime three functions of sensory system, and everything revolves around it. Our behavior, our reactions, others' behavior towards us, everything is influenced by this sensory system. Now coming to sensory processing. What is it? What is sensory processing disorder? And what are the types of sensory processing disorders? So sensory processing is that a stimulus is given to your body. Stimulus is given to your body, and the brain takes up the stimulus and it processes and interprets the information. So it can make sense out of it and take an action. So sensory processing is the way the nervous system receives the message and turns them into responses and useful perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. So in sensory processing disorder, what will happen is the stimulus is received, but it is not correctly processed, or it might be processed, but it is not converted into a motor action correctly. So unlike the impairment of senses like blindness, deafness, impairment of eyesight, or hearing, those people cannot receive the stimulus. So there is no sensory processing disorder because the stimulus has not received. But when the stimulus is received but not correctly interpreted or not correctly perceived, then it becomes sensory processing disorder. So the pioneer of the sensory processing disorder is a mixture going on, and there is so much of confusion in the brain that the child is not able to process what have I received, what am I supposed to filter out, what do we classify the sensory processing disorder. Sensory processing disorder is broadly categorized into three categories. One is modulation, second is discrimination, and the third is sensory based motor disorder. So, sensory modulation disorder. Now, this is the biggest part that we deal with in our daily routines and with our kids. So again, sensory modulation is of three types: over responsive, under responsive, and sensory craver. So, whenever we talk of sensory system, we usually talk of either sensory seeker or sensory avoider. What we forget is sensory craver. So I'll talk about these three in short, and then we will be talking about it with different senses in detail. Over responsive child is somebody who reacts to everything like an overreaction. So if I touch your hand like this, it'll be normal to you. But if I touch the hand of an over responsive child, he'll be like, oh my god, you've hurt me. It is paining. So a simple stimulus might feel like huge to that child. That's why they cannot wear socks, they cannot wear tight clothing, they do not like the touch of this particular tag or this particular thing, they do not like the flavor of the food, they are just over responsive to things. Under responsive, now why am I talking of responsivity, I'm sorry to interrupt. We will be dealing with sensory system in terms of responses rather than sensitivity. Sensitivity we will leave it for the assessment part. Okay, to understand it is important to think of the responsive is a child for whom a very small stimulus can be very huge. A small sound in the background which we might not even notice can be huge for the child. An aeroplane going over the sky, they can hear it out from a large distance that okay, an aeroplane has passed, and it'll be very clear that this thing has happened. So that is an over responsive child. An under responsive child will be oblivious to things. He will not know that I will react to. If somebody has hit us here, for an under responsive child, it might not mean anything. He might not even feel any pain. Or even if he felt it, it will just be a normal touch to him. Okay. And sensory cravers are the people uh, who can just, who want that input again and again and again. It is more like an addict. An addict wants an input and can't stop at one, say, an alcoholic. So, if you give an alcoholic a single peg, he will not stop there. He wants it again and again, and he gets into a vicious circle of having it more and wanting it more. The same is for sensory craver. He wants the input, but it keeps on dysregulating him. Now, most often, we confuse under responsive child and a sensory craver child. So we only talk of the two things whenever parents also talk to each other, or we as parents we understand that okay, my child is seeking input, so he is under responsive or hyposensitive as we call it, or my child is avoiding the input, so he is a hypersensitive or over responsive child. But the confusion between hypo, or I should say under responsive, and a craver is that when an input is given to both of them, one gets regulated and the other gets dysregulated. Both want more information, more input into a circle that he wants to go on and on and on. Some kids will just rip off the chewy tubes. Some will just keep on running the whole them regulated. This is not settling them down, and we need to look for ways to handle it, which we will be talking about. Next is sensory based motor disorder. So, in this, we have two things: dyspraxia and postural disorders. Before dyspraxia, I'll be talking about praxis. What is praxis? Praxis is a series of steps the body makes to make a movement or plan. So, if I have to hit with a cricket ball, So I need to think that the ball is coming. I need to raise my bat to a certain level. I have to hit it here. I have to hit in a particular direction. So all these steps, small steps before hitting the ball is praxis. What happens in sensory based motor disorder, dyspraxia? This connection is somewhere broken. There is steps of planning from the brain so that the child cannot function properly. This child can have poor balance, he can have difficulties getting dressed, he can have difficulty with the normal playground equipments. And dyspraxia we very often see when the kid grows up, say class 2, class 3, then we see that he can read very fine. But when it comes to writing, he is having issues. Whereas his visual perception is good, he doesn't even have a very overt sensory issue. So this might be one reason that the visual perception is fine, the mind is perceiving it fine. But when it comes to converting into a motor system or a motor plan, so the child is having problem there. The second category is postural disorder. Uh, in this disorder, the kids are very much of a sedentary type. They do not want to move. They have very low trunk control or the core strength that we call. And these are the kids that usually keep slumping down in the chair. They are sitting with all the arm support and everything. Still, they will just keep going down the chair because they cannot sustain their seating position due to lack of trunk control. And they get tired easily. They do not like motor activities. They do not like to play a lot. They do not like to get involved into sports. And we are not talking of extremes, we usually find small discrepancies in our kids in daily routine, and they often coexist. Sensory modulation, sensory based motor disorders, sensory discrimination, they overlap. And you will actually find, if you analyze, that my child is having this over responsive, this hyper, this thing which I'll talk about. So what I mean to say is, think and see, analyze that things can overlap. There is no clear cut thing that if a child is over responsive or under responsive, he will not have dyspraxia, or he will not have postural disorder, or he will not have discrimination. He can have all of it or some of it. Next is sensory discrimination order. So discrimination means distinguishing the two things. And again, it can happen in all the systems, visual, auditory, taste, smell, your proprioception, vestibular. When a child is not able to discriminate between things, like temperature, whether the cloth is soft or hard. He talks very loudly, thinking that if I give a child straw and he will just start blowing on it, and if I give him a horn, he will start sucking on it. So there is no discrimination that what am I supposed to do with a particular thing. So all these things, when the child is not able to discriminate that this is hot, this is cold, this is soft, this is rough, this is loud, this is soft, this is lower volume, and this falls into discrimination. And when we talk of auditory processing or visual processing, visual scanning, all this falls under sensory discrimination disorder. Now, sensory system, as we are saying, is very dynamic and full of permutations and combinations. So mixed sensitivity would be something where the subtypes are overlapping. As I said before, a child might be over responsive in one sense, but under responsive in the other, or maybe a craver in other. He might have dyspraxia and he might have some postural issues. Again, he might not be able to discriminate certain things pertaining to particular sense. So a mixed sensitivity is very often what we see, and a clear cut processing disorder, as in a sensory modulation of this, is rare. So we usually see mixed sensitivities and try to analyze things with an open mind. Fluctuating sensitivity is something that keeps on changing on a daily basis. Like today I'm feeling okay, tomorrow I might be feeling over responsive, the next day I might be feeling under responsive. And it can even change within the day, from the morning to afternoon to evening. That morning the child was fine, but by afternoon or by evening he got hyperactive or he was reacting weird. because of the sensory overload that was building over the whole day. And even in the morning, like if he's in a session or if he's doing an activity with you, and suppose there were 2 times that he was supposed to repeat, or 5 times he was supposed to repeat. So once he did it and he did it very fine. But the other time you went and you were like, okay, let's repeat the whole cycle. And he's like, no, I'll not do it. So you might think that the child is being defiant or not ready to do or stubborn. But the fact is that something in the environment might have changed or has happened, that he got dysregulated and he's not ready to, he's not able to work accordingly. He's not now able to process the information and make a motor plan as he did in the first time, because maybe some noise in the background, or maybe someone entered in the room and he just felt that smell or he felt that visual. Something in the environment has changed. So many a times we feel that the child is showing negative behaviors, whereas it is not behaviors, it is not consider those things. Now coming to our 8 senses. So what are the 8 senses in the body? First is visual, then auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, proprioceptive, vestibular, and interoception. So coming to visual sense. The visual system is responsible for seeing or vision. This is the system that helps in identification of objects, colors, shapes, matching, remembering, reading, and it has visual motor integration. And visual is a very strong sense, and it affects a lot of other sense. It directly affects the vestibular system, it directly affects the gustatory system, then your proprioception system, even your tactile at times. So visual is having a very huge control over our body, and it is also very strongly related to attention of the child. So if visual system is addressed correctly, there is high chance that the child will be pretty attentive to the task, because we can address most of the heavy hitters through this sense. Then auditory system is responsible for hearing, and the external sense organ is our ears, and it helps in discrimination of sounds in the background, or the discrimination of the sound of a person versus background. And the major area involved in comprehending language is located in the left hemisphere of the brain and is called Wernicke's area. So if auditory system is affected, or the processing is affected in the system, we will directly see an. It helps us in discriminating among odors, in enhancing detection of odors, filtering out the background odors, and allowing higher brain areas related to arousal and attention to modify the detection and or discrimination of odors. And another very important thing or very interesting thing about olfactory senses, that it is related to memory. And researchers have been going on that if you trigger the olfactory system, you can take the person or the child back in time and space where he had first smelled, first inhaled that particular smell. So when we how this thing interferes is when we present a food to a child or a particular scent to a child, so he might just become aversive, even if he's seeing it for the first time according to your experience. But going back in time, he might have experienced it before and he did not like it, and that particular smell takes him to that uh, experience he had in past as compared to what he's having in present. So olfactory is very highly related to memory. Next comes gustatory. It is responsible for the sense of taste. It allows us to discriminate between safe and harmful foods. So, majorly, we have 4 taste sensations: salt, sweet, bitter, and sour, and savory also. Savory is more of spicy food. So, savory is preferred in kids who are under responsive to taste sensations. And for every taste sensation, we have taste buds on the tongue, and the primary gustatory cortex is present between the temporal and the frontal lobes. So this system is responsible for the taste stimuli, and in the mouth directly affects what the child can eat and what he cannot eat. Tactile system, it is responsible for processing touch information from the body. It is one of the foundational systems used in sensory integration treatment. So when we go on to integrate the senses, tactile, proprioception, vestibular, and interoception. These are the four senses that we first target, and then we go to visual, auditory, gustatory, and olfactory. That is how we usually process the senses. It is very important. It plays a huge role in sensory processing disorder because we see many issues related directly to tactile. And if the child has tactile issues, he will have most likely gustatory issues. And skin is all over the body, so it has a very huge impact. Unless tactile issues are addressed, it is very difficult to move on to the next thing. And proprioception. So what is proprioception? uh, Till now, we have been talking about the senses for which we see the receptors. For vision, we have eyes. For auditory, we have ears. For gustatory, we have tongue. For tactile, we have skin. And for I'm missing out. For olfactory, we have nose. But now the three system, proprioception, vestibular, and interoception, these are the hidden senses. We do not have the receptors present outside the body for them. So proprioception is inside the body, and it is the sense of muscles and joint movements. Proprioception system senses the position, location, orientation, and movement of the body muscles and joints, something that we call as body awareness. So proprioception is one sense that will tell me that my hand is in air in relation to my body, or my hands are in front in relation to my body. My left hand is going there, my right hand is going there, my head is going on the left side. So that where our hands are, or where our body parts are in relation to other body parts. It is again a very calming sense. If you activate the proprioceptive sense, then it gives you immense calmness. It gives the child immense calmness. Like we get a deep massage. When we are very tired, we get a deep massage and we immediately feel relaxed. So this is one sense in the body which has a very calming effect. However, it can still vary that a child might be over responsive to proprioception. And generally we see that proprioceptive, we 99% of the kids, I'll say, fall under responsive, and they like some sort of proprioception. But I do have a kid on my caseload, and she was given massages and Wilbarger brushing and uh, pressure through gym ball in the OT sessions, and she just had huge behavioral issues. Within 15 days, her behavioral issues shot up like anything, and she started biting, she started pulling hair a lot. So, you need to analyze how the child is reacting to a particular thing, what has changed that introduced the behavior. This is how big an impact uh, a particular sense can make on our body, on our daily routines and our behaviors. So the purpose was to say that even though it is working for 90% of the kids, but it is not working for those 10% of the population. So we need to see what exactly the child needs and not go with the flow. Now the next is vestibular system. So vestibular system is again a hidden system, and it is controlled by the semicircular canals in our inner ear. This particular system gives us a sense of balance and orientation in space. Now vestibular movements are again of three types. One is rotation, second is lateral to and fro, uh, lateral movement, and side to side, that is, and the third one is to and fro. So again, a child might need just one of these movements and not all of these movements to get regulated. So we have to also see which particular movement is calming down the child or making him more regulated. Now, vestibular system directly affects your gaze stability. Gaze stability is that if I'm moving my head in space like side to side, but my gaze is fixed on my screen. So even if I'm going side by side, I can still read on my screen that what is written. This is gaze stability. Second thing it directly affects is gait stability. Gait is the way a person walks. So obviously, if there is no balance sense in your body, so you will be clumsy walker and you might have a wide stance in walking. You might be looking like you'll just go off balance and fall and trip down. So vestibular system gives you that balance to walk properly, to run properly, and without getting dizzy. And it gives you a special spatial orientation. That is, where am I in this whole, like I'm sitting in this whole room. So I know that gait stability and spatial orientation. Now, the eighth sense is interoception. Uh, I don't know if it is relatively new or it was pre-existing, because when I started with my son's therapies, so we were not aware of this sense. And over a period of time, we came to know that, okay, this is this eighth sense, which has now been incorporated in text, and it is called interoception. And this is something that controls your whole inner system, including how you're feeling with your sense organs, how you are feeling emotionally, how you're feeling, your thoughts, your emotions, everything is controlled by this particular system. Interoceptors are present on the linings of the sense organs, that is, gut or pancreas or heart or lungs, everything. So, the lining of the sense organs has introducers which take the stimulus from there and send it to the brain. So, if there's a problem with interoception, we see that the child can go hungry or not drinking anything for hours. He will have difficulty in getting toilet trained. He will have poor sense of pain, poor sense of temperature, need for air. He will not feel much. When we talk of our kids, ASD kids, we feel it is very difficult. He does not get toilet trained. He is not feeling anything, whether it is hot, it is cold. He will just dip his hand, and there's nothing much that he feels. And interoception uh, is also, as it is related to the internal sense organs. So we also find that in kids who are having gut issues, the child is often constipated or the child is often having diarrhea, he will have the whole sensory system uh, upside down or dysregulated. So that is why we also need to see that the gut issues are resolved for the ASD kids, so the interoception can work properly. Now, how systems interrelate? Well, all the systems interrelate and all the systems work together. Sensory system is very dynamic and very complex. And if I talk of different senses, okay, so proprioception, vestibular, tactile, and interoception. These are the four that we respond to or we address the first and the foremost in all the senses, because they are the hardest to tackle. And once they are tackled, so we will see the others become easier. Visual and auditory, they directly impact the vestibular system, because vestibular system is here, inner ear ke andar. Imagine this deep inside, and somewhere back here you have your semicircular canals. So if I'm moving head here and there, anytime my head moves, my vestibular system is activated. Directly affects the gustatory system. If the child is not liking the smell, or if the child is having too much sensation of the smell, he will not be able to have food. Directly affects the gustatory. Visual also affects the gustatory. Interoception affects the tactile, how the child very, very strong system. And we often see that sometimes kids they do not eat without. Happens is all the systems get shut down. The visual is so strong that it is able to overpower all other systems. And the moment you take their iPad or their video game or their mobile off, there's a huge sound. Same thing we see that if he's lining up the toys and he's lined it up and engrossed in it totally, and you come and you take out one car and you see a sensory meltdown to a great extent, and you're just unable to figure out what happened. So what happened was that he was so involved in the visual system that it has cut off all the systems of the body. And as soon as you, that's why we need to restrict the screen time. Why we say that screen time is harmful for the kids, because it shuts down all other systems. That is why we have to reduce it. Okay, so why is sensory system so important? Because if you see the pyramid of learning, to go to the higher executive levels or the daily routine activities, the academic part, unless you address the sensory system, there is no going forward. Even if you go forward, there will come a form over the years. It is dynamic. It keeps on changing. It keeps on fluctuating every hour. Now I'm feeling in a good mood, but something happened and suddenly my mood is off and I wanted to eat something very badly. But the moment it came in front of me, I did not like the sight of it or I did not like the smell of it. I don't want to eat it anymore. So it is ever fluctuating and ever changing. So that is why we need to know our sensory systems to understand the child's sensory system. And this is the process that will go on throughout their lives. And that's why we want that parents should understand the system so that they can address the activities at home. So without for the new parents especially, if you just enter into it, so my sincere advice would be that you first address the sensory. Once it is resolved to a certain extent, then move on to the next therapies. As soon as we get a diagnosis, what we do is we will just go and enroll in special education, speech classes, OT. Yes, OT is directly addressing the sensory issues. Completely agreed. So you have to start with that, but give the child time to regulate himself, to come into terms with his body, and then you go on and start with other therapies. Otherwise, just the child will just be overloaded. We just don't have to get into the uh, pressure of getting therapies done for the child without understanding why and what we want. And why we need to understand sensory system is also because even in our OT classes, we need to know what is happening and why is it happening. If my child is doing a particular activity, I should know what is the logic behind it. And then I should come back home and see how my child reacted after the class. If he reacted well, if he was settled, if he was regulated, yes, this was the right activity. If he was not, you should go back to your therapist and tell him that, sir or ma'am, after this particular therapy, my child was not feeling good. And this feedback I take almost every single time when the child enters my therapies, that how did he react at home, ma'am? How was he or she doing at home? It is very important to know because therapy is happening only for 45 minutes or 1 hour. The child has to stay at home for the rest 23 hours. So it is very important that the child is stable at home and not in the therapies. Therapies is the building block for the daily routine activity. So just try and understand and see what is happening, why is happening, and what is the right time for your child to parents. And we do get influenced, but it is our responsibility for our child to understand what is my child's needs. Something that worked for one child might not work for my child. Uh, Recently, there was this parent, and she told that I started with, but it does not help all. So, if the child is not responding positively to something, you need to stop it rather than thinking that, oh no, he will get used to it. You can see the reaction 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. After that, make a decision that this is not working for my child. Let me try something else. I'm not saying stop it. Try something else. There are ample of things to choose from. So be fearless and try, but don't make the child guinea pig. Don't experiment everything and anything that you come to know and just go and try it on your child. First think, does my child need it? Here we need to understand arousal and regulation. So, arousal is a state of peak alert. Have an optimal arousal level to attend to the whole webinar and be present in the moment. So, regulation is keeping me here in the moment, and arousal is maintaining my same state of alertness. So, if in the starting of the webinar I was here, so by the end of the webinar I should be here. So, my arousal state has to be maintained, and regulation, I should be here in the moment. I should not be thinking of the light is too bright, the fan is too slow, the sound is coming from here. No, I need to be here. So, what is optimal arousal? Let's take does not have the right state of alertness. He's not alert enough to attend to the task. Or if he's over aroused, that he's too alert to attend to a task. So we don't need the under and we don't need the too alert, both of them. We need to bring them to and to have a minimal arousal level. And we see discrepancies in this regulation and arousal right from a very young age. And we don't know the reason. Again, there are some kids who are not doing anything, who have been just such good kids to try, but that is an under aroused kid that I'm talking about who's not doing anything, and the over aroused kid who's just crying for no other reason because he has no expression. So both the states are not optimal. We want the child to react to some things and we want the child to be calmed down relatively easier and not after crying or hours of crying. So both have to be brought to an optimal arousal level. Self-regulation. So what is self-regulation? It is the ability to adjust or regulate the level of alertness depending on the time of the day and stimuli presented. So regulation, we know that I need to keep myself aroused enough to be in this particular state. Self is that I have to do it myself. For our kids, we help them uh, by giving some activities or by giving some inputs to bringing them to a regulated level. When they can do it themselves, it becomes self-regulation. And the ultimate goal of addressing sensory system is to teach the child how to self-regulate. If he cannot self-regulate and still, that is why, we have to go for therapies years together, because somewhere down the line we forgot that we have to teach the child to self-regulate. If he understands that on his own, and if he can do it on his own or with some help from the elder, so we can, I think, cut down therapies after some time. I'm not against therapies, but it's just that I feel that parents should really work with the child and should empower themselves with enough knowledge so that they know when to go and where to go. So how to bring about that self regulation? The activities, it is very customized for each child, and it is not a prescribed set that this is what you have to do when it comes to sensory diet. My child regulated, so they cannot be a part of my child's sensory diet. I need to list down the list of activities that this makes my child feel good. Bouncing makes him good, running makes him good, uh, pressure makes him regulated. I have to get that list ready. And for self-regulation, now if the child is verbal enough, pretty good. You can just talk it out that out of these activities, which one would you like to do at this present state of mind, which you will feel, which will make you feel good. But if the child is not verbal enough, so you can use visual cues, visual cards or text system to ask him what do you want to do, or create some symbols like if you pick red means you are over aroused and you need to calm down. If you pick yellow means you are under aroused and you need to get over what he's doing, what kind of activities he's doing throughout the day. Self regulation will be difficult. We cannot impose the activities on the child and expect him to self regulate. If I have to self regulate, I need to have control over what I'm supposed to do. If I feel like eating now, I will eat. If I do not feel like eating and you just, um, give me the food and stuff it into my mouth, I will not feel regulated. It will just make me very disoriented. So it has to be a conscious choice, and the child should be involved uh, in the process of making that decision. But another thing that I would like to point out here is in the process of giving control, we sometimes give a lot of control to the child and he becomes very, very controlling. At even a younger age, a 3 year or a 4 year child is like he wants things the way he wants it. He will just not listen. So in that thing, I will say ki, you need to look and analyze where is the insecurity happening. That child is feeling unsafe. That child, not unsafe as in literally, as in he doesn't know what is happening with his body. So he's feeling insecure, he's feeling unsafe, he doesn't know what to do. So he wants to have control over everything that is happening around him. So if you analyze and address those small insecurity points, then the control can be brought down to a minimal level. And sometimes, so it is about striking a balance, that let's make a decision together. You as an individual and I as an individual, we respect each other's choices, but at the same time, we need to see what is right and what is wrong, what should be done, what should not be done. So, giving some sense of control to the child will definitely help in self regulation. Self calming strategies. Again, self regulation may he the self calming strategies come that if I'm feeling very fidgety or irritated, then the child can probably take a quiet break, or he can clench his hands, he can clap his hands, he can start counting reverse, or he can take some pressure, or he can just jump on trampoline for some time. So we can just put pictures of the things or activities which calm him down, and then we can ask him to choose that which activity do you want. Corner also helps a lot of kids. And again, need to take care of the thing that if you're doing an activity and I thought I'll do it 20 times, but the child is not able to, so you should allow him to take break. If he can express, good. If his body language is telling you stop, then stop. It will, nothing will happen if an activity is not completed. If you did not complete 20 times, it's okay, but it's more important for the child to remain, even if I have a schedule made and I know that I need to get this thing done, but from his body language he's not he's thankfully he started talking now, but still there are many things he cannot express. So I have to sometimes read his body language that okay, he wants to do this thing now and he doesn't want to do that thing. We're sorted. He's also fine and I'm also fine. I cannot bring the child to the peak and then tell him that what are you doing and then start hitting him or shouting at him. That doesn't work. So let's try to keep a balance. Especially with the high functioning kids, we see these arousal activities, high arousal. They want to be in that high arousal state always. It gives them a sort of high. So we have to limit their activities, as I was saying, for sensory cravers. So how do we build that process from arousal state to the production state? So in this thing, what happens is that first of all, the child has to be regulated to a certain parameter and brought to a brought to an optimal arousal level. When he is at the optimal arousal, led therapies or child led play therapy or sunrise therapy, what happens there is that a child is doing his own activity and he has enough arousal state to attend to whatever task he's doing. So now if you go and interrupt that, he will suddenly lose it. So we have to enter into his system, enter into his activity, and develop that cordial relationship so that he listens to us. Once that bond is made, or once that connection is made, the child will do anything to please you. Once the have to build the relationship. Very often we listen that the child is working only with a particular person, say with the mother, or the child is working in the therapies but at home he is doing absolutely nothing because the relationship has not been developed. If a child is supposed painting and he's painting haphazardly, it makes no sense. Our first instinct would be, oh, what is he doing? Let me just draw. Come, beta, let's draw a tree. Come, let's draw a heart, make an apple. It's okay. Just calm down, relax. Go back to what he's doing. He's just haphazardly painting. Take a brush, start painting without interrupting his painting. Take a separate sheet or do something. The child is already enough attentive that he's doing his work. When you get his attention and he is aware that you're there, when that arousal state reaches a level where he can attend to you, he will start observing you. When he starts observing you, then you have to make a slight change. Suppose if he is drawing a sleeping line, you cannot directly draw a hut. You have to make a sleeping line and maybe a standing line or a slanting line. Just something different, slightly different, but very similar to what he's doing already, so that the child does not feel insecure and shut down immediately. Okay. Once that relationship is addressed, then we move on to working on his sensory system, and then to motor production, motor movements, and finally we get the task done. But the basis here is relationship formation. Now coming to addressing sensory issues. How do we identify and what are the various activities? So first we will start with the heavy hitters, under responsive, over responsive and sensory cravers. When a child is under responsive to proprioception, he will have difficulty maintaining his postures. He will be clumsy, he will have a wide stance, and they often chew on clothing. They need that input. They seek oral input a lot. They will chew the chewy tubes or anything. They have huge mouthing issues. They often bump into walls or people. They will not notice much that how much pressure are they exerting. They will just go and bam into the people. Actually squeezing your hand. And most often we see that the kids are playing with fathers and they suddenly become very rough, and they don't realize it because they're not realizing how much pressure they're putting. So under responsive kids, they tend to be rough in their handling of people, of pets, and even we see that while writing, the under responsive kid will have very dark writing and it will just leave impressions on the pages, whereas an over responsive kid will like write very lightly. He will not again understand how much pressure am I supposed to exert to write. An over responsive kid will not be willing to swing, will not be willing to jump. He will enter into a fight or flight mode with movement. uh, okay, fight or flight reminded me of one thing that I missed. There is recent research that's going on for the sensory system, that there are two systems in our body: sympathetic system and sympathetic system. So sympathetic system is something that helps us deal with a danger or a threat. It sends us into a flight or a fight mode. And parasympathetic system is something that helps us recover it. Suppose I saw a dog and I'm afraid of a dog, but immediately my parasympathetic system kicks in and it's like, okay, it's away from me and I can walk down safely through the street. So I can immediately regulate and walk it down. But for a kid having sensory processing disorder, the sympathetic system is already active. He saw the dog, it got kicked, he entered into the flight and fight mode. But the parasympathetic system is having a lag time or maybe taking too long to enter, and he might just start shouting and screaming, or go back or start hand flapping or something to show his distress because that parasympathetic did not kick in. So that's how over responsive kids react. And kids who are over responsive to proprioception, they do not like to be touched or squeezed tightly, and they appear very lazy or lethargic, and they prefer to sit. They are mainly sedentary kids who would not like to be involved actively in any activity, whereas under responsive proprioceptive kids will be actively and kids, so they are not aware much. For sensory cravers, again, they just want to do it all day long. They will keep rocking, they will keep jumping, they will keep pacing, they will flap their hands, they will, yes, this very common thing, they hold on to the objects throughout the day. So that is because they are seeking that proprioception through their hands the whole day long. So, what we have to take care of this thing, sensory craver, is that we have to give them input, but the only solution is that you need to change the type of input. If a child is rocking and he's rocking to and fro continuously, and this is dysregulating him, this is not making him calm down or regulated. So, a child is a craver and we need to satisfy his urge. So, change the activity. Maybe try jumping on the trampoline, or maybe try push ups, wheelbarrow walks, animal walks. There are ample of strategies. You need to change it. For example, a child who is mouthing a lot. So, TMJ is a very high proprioceptive joint. Jitna proprioception we get from TMJ, we hardly get from any other bone or joint in the body. But if the child is mouthing continuously, chewing continuously, and on the clothes, on the objects, on non-edible items, so this is an indication that now the whole body has to be involved. And we maybe need to use very heavy proprioceptive exercises like lifting weights or crashing on the crash pads. So at home, what we can do, we don't have crash mattresses, so any soft mattresses if you have, or on the bed maybe, put some pillows, and you can allow the child to just crash into it. A child with very heavy proprioceptive need would love it. And how many times do they need to do it depends on their system. um, Recently I was going through a workshop on sensory processing, so there was this example: a kid crashed 120 times to feel satisfied. So some kids can get satisfied in 10 times, 20 times, but this particular child, he took 120 crashes to calm himself down. So it entirely depends on the child's sensory system, how much input he needs. So for hypo kids who need proprioceptive activities, we will give them that input, give them lots of animal walks, jumping, hurdle jumps, somersaults, then squeezing, giving pressure, joint compressions, and body socks is there. And they even like weighted vests and weighted blankets. Weighted blankets is a great way to make the child sleep, but it should be used for a very small duration. Even weighted vests should not be worn for a long time, because the child again gets habituated to that much level of proprioception, and it becomes difficult for us to keep it regulated in the near future. Suppose if I'm giving already 1 or 2 kg of the weight on his body, so the body will adapt. It was calm for some time, yes, maybe for a month or 2 months he was calm and he was happy with that 2 kg weight. But after 2 months, what I find is that he's again getting into a dysregulated state. So I need to increase the weight. So we cannot do that. So sensory system has to be given input in short stances. That I gave you West for 10 minutes, I took it back. So you get regulated, and immediately I move the input out, so that the child learns to maintain that state of regulation. Okay. So, stretching exercises, yes. Stretching exercises is again a great way of giving proprioceptive input, and it can be easily done at home. Our yoga stretches or jumping jacks is there, touching alternate toe touches. These are some easy activities that can be done at home. Next is our vestibular system. So vestibular system, uh, for an under-responsive kid, he loses his balance easily. He enjoys spinning. He enjoys swinging. He will just keep, going in circles throughout the day, keep running throughout the day. He enjoys very high risk play. Kids who require proprioceptive and vestibular input a lot, usually we find that both the senses are either over together or under together. Very rarely they do high risk plays. They like to be upside down or hanging from the furniture. Whereas for an over responsive child who has high response to vestibular, he will have gravitational insecurity. So, gravitational insecurity is whenever your feet leave the ground, you feel very anxious or very dysregulated. You don't know what to do, very confused, like for the child. And we see that they sit down, they do not want to go, they have problems climbing down and up the stairs, they don't want to do it. Here to be stubborn, because vestibular is such a strong sensory system that any discrepancy in that makes you feel very disoriented. So the child will not do it, appear to be stubborn, take your punishments rather than do the thing. So that child has to be brought down to the optimal level very gradually. Generally, for under responsive kids, we keep on we keep on decreasing the stimulus. We give them high stimulus initially and then keep on decreasing it to bring it to an optimal level. And for an over responsive kid, we start with less stimulations and then keep on increasing it. For sensory cravers in vestibular system, they like to move their head and body repeatedly. They spin very frequently. They seek out movement which interferes in their daily activities. Like even if they're sitting and working, they'll just be doing this, or they'll just, if nothing else, they'll just keep spinning the objects in their hands. Even that gives them that vestibular input through the visual system. So bending down, bending up and bending down, that also makes few people dizzy because they're over responsive to vestibular system. They, as you bend down and you came up, your head was in movement and your semicircular canals was in movement, and so vestibular system was triggered. So there was another example. There was this dyslexic kid, or the teachers thought he has dyslexia, but when he was actually assessed, he was found over responsive to the vestibular system. So the moment he would bend down to read and bring his head up, he was disoriented and he could not concentrate on reading. So if that is addressed correctly, if we find the reasons behind why a child is doing something or why a child is behaving in a certain way, it is very easy to address it rather than just thinking of it and labeling it as behaviors. So what can be done for vestibular system? See, vestibular system, a great way of addressing it is through swings and through gym ball activities, sliding, rocking, jumping. But you can also address it easily through visual system. Very simple activities like moving the head up and down, side to side, or giving neck rotations to the child, like right side and then left side. Giving log rolls to the child. Log rolls mean you ask him to take his hand up and you move him in clockwise direction, and then you move him in anti-clockwise direction. Same thing can be done on the floor. You make the child lie down, move him forward, and then roll him backward. So those are called log rolls. These are the activities that you can easily do at home. Dancing you can easily do at home. Hanging upside down, we used to do that with the kids. Like we will take them on the lap and then throw them down upside down. A child who is hypo or under responsive or a craver might just love it. So think of activities that you can do at home. Vestibular, anything that gets your head moving will provide you a vestibular input. Even if you do not have swings at home, it's absolutely okay. You don't need to have that. You can give that with the help of visual stimuli. Go for aerobic exercises, go for dancing, go for yogas. Any sort of thing that is giving you movement can address vestibular system. But keep an eye on how the child is reacting. We might think he's liking it, but after two movements, we find that he's dizzy. So, eyes to calm themselves down. It's not that they're having headache or something, but they are providing themselves proprioception, an activity. If you give him a pressure or a massage, he generally calms down. Generally, I'm again repeating it. Uh, Nothing works for every kid. You have to analyze. But in general, proprioception counterbalances vestibular. So if you add the two together, you generally have a regulated state of child. Which activities he likes and which he dislikes has to be judged totally from his reactions. But there are many things that can be done at home, and especially, bending down activities, simple toe touches, moving the head, doing rotations, keeping the arms here, and then touching it on your neck. So, involving the head movement and your body movement up and down should be done. And one more thing I'd like to point out is whenever you're doing an activity, suppose simple hammering, so first do it on the table, then do it on the wall, put it on the wall and hammer like that. And then somewhere, make the child lie down and put it above and do it, let him do upwards. So it should be done in all three planes because for strengthening vestibular system, all three planes have to be addressed. So next is tactile. Tactile, under responsive tactile, kid with the tactile system, he just likes to touch everything, even lick everything. He is generally messy but unaware. He would not notice that my hands have got dirty, my mouth is dirty. He generally doesn't feel much pain. He is not much affected by temperature, pressure, or strength. He even might have self-injurious behaviors at times related to touch, and he likes to sit in a tight place where he can feel his body compressed. And these kids often do not give other people much space. They stand very close to people. Like even my son, he stands very close to people. He's under responsive to tactile. So, and they prefer tight clothing because that gives them that sensation of togetherness. Whereas for an over responsive child, he just doesn't like anything touching to him. Even the clothing is difficult to wear, the tags on the clothing is difficult, the seams are difficult, and they need their personal space. They do not like when people come near to them. And that is what very often we see, that whenever, even the known people, apart from those who are living in the family 24 hours, other than that, other relatives come and they try to hold the child, and the child is suddenly into a fit and he will just hit. That is because he's not liking it, he is not liking your touch. So even when I go somewhere, I have to tell everyone that, okay, dur se hi say namaste to mama, or namaste to chachu, and when he gets comfortable, then he will automatically go and talk to them. But if the first time somebody tries to touch a child with the over response, then he will not like it, and they avoid getting dirty. They are usually not fond of the sensory play. They become upset. Brushing is a huge task for kids with the over response. All big tasks for the tactile over responsive kids. For the cravers, they constantly touch people, or they constantly touch objects, and they crave texture. They can't keep their hands off. They'll just keep on touching everything. They want messy activities. They totally enjoy it. Almost all the kids enjoy it, but they just can't keep their hands to themselves. They have to continuously fidget. They are very fidgety kind of kids. So, while addressing this tactile system, whenever you're giving a massage or applying lotion, or doing that will budge or brush or something, so you have to take care that the pressure has to be firm. I mean, not very firm, but it should be firm so that he can feel it, and consistent. A very light touch will be very ticklish to the child and it will be more disturbing. So, a firm yet uh, like we say, firm and polite. So just a firm pressure, not deep, not light. And very often for tactile system, we see that, as soon as you realize your child has hair cutting issues or your child has brushing issues, directly go to the vibrations. See, vibration is a very high level tactile cueing system. So when you're desensitizing a kid, we have to start with small stimuli or light stimuli and then go on to the heavier systems. Like, I hardly used vibrations with my kids during my sessions because it's rarely required. While desensitizing, first I'll do with a cloth, then I'll do with the tooth it, then I'll do with my instruments without vibration, and in the end I have to go for vibration. And with the kids who have seizure activity, specifically, you have to take care of the vibrations. It just might trigger it. Also, with the vestibular system, I would like to mention the kids who are having seizure issues. Please take care that they are not given too much of rotational activity, as it might trigger lateral, side to side, and to and fro. It should be acceptable. So, vibrations, please don't jump directly to vibrations whenever you are addressing a tactile system. Desensitize him slowly. A child who is not tolerating the touch and you're directly like into his system giving vibrations, he is going dysregulated. Few days are going to be horrible for you. ठीक है, his body will get adapted. But let's desensitization process has to go gradual and has to go slow. Why don't we start brushing? Maybe take a hanky or just massage the gums with it. If he's able to tolerate that, change the texture of the hanky, then start with it. Then start with the soft toothbrush, and vibrator will not be required once he starts doing it. So we actually don't need vibrations. And in cases, vibrations are actually we give to there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Okay, so vibrations you have to avoid, and desensitization has to go gradual. Yes, while brushing, see, we are only thinking of vibration and the brush touch. So in that, first of all, you have to rule out there shouldn't be any dental issue, there shouldn't be any caries. Then you desensitize the system. Also, you have to look for the taste of the toothpaste, which we often neglect. The problem might not be the brush, the problem might be the toothpaste. So if a child is responding well without the toothpaste, So please go and change it, or you brush your child's teeth without the toothpaste before giving him vibrations. So for addressing the tactile system, there are a lot of tactile activities. There's a lot of sensory play. You have to expose the child to different textures uh, over the period of time. For a child who's under responsive, give him high quality textures, hard, rough, which he can really feel. The grass, like that. And for a child who's over responsive, we'll go for lighter touches, silk cloth, cotton, the toys, and ask the child to find and tell you what toy is it. It works both for sensory play and tactile discrimination. Other things that you can do is play with the play-doh and atta, give him multani mitti, give him cornstarch, give him normal wheat flour or maida. Both dry and wet are acceptable depending on how the child is reacting. Then swaddling the kids, sometimes they really like it. You can give them fidget toys. A warm bath usually helps. Weighted blankets, again, help in dealing with the tactile issues. Then painting activities, anything to do with the hands, hand printing or finger painting, they love it. So there are ample of tactile activities that you can do at home. Next is interoception. So interoception for an under-responsive kid is difficulties in noticing what is happening. He will not feel hunger, he will not feel thirst, he will not feel cold, he will not feel hot, he will not notice his heartbeats. So he doesn't know patience because he doesn't want to feel that sensation of being hungry, or he will use the washroom very frequently, or he will not like it if there's because that sends me into a distress. For a craver, he might crave the sensations of hunger. He can intentionally go hungry or thirsty or not use the washroom because he enjoys that sensation of being in that state. So, for interoception, the child should be aware of the self and for the surroundings. So how do we develop interoception is through mindfulness. Mindfulness, the goal of mindfulness is to increase awareness in order to respond to situations with choice rather than reacting automatically. So if I have food in front of me, it's not necessary that it has to just you switch on the TV or you switch on the laptop and the child just eats, because he's not aware. He's just not aware that he's eating the food. And as soon as the TV is off, no food going inside because that interoception kicks in. So he should make a conscious decision that yes, I'm hungry, I want to eat. I am thirsty, I want to drink. We have to teach the child those things. And for teaching that, again, we have to either prepare a visual schedule or visual cards or text for a child who's non-verbal. And for a verbal child, you need to talk it out. Another way is to give them yoga exercises, meditation, because the child has to calm himself down. He should think before he can do anything. And for thinking, it is always good to have that stillness of mind. So, meditation exercises are very good, yoga exercises are very good. Talking about it. Uh, Before talking, deep breathing. Deep breathing is also very good for interoception. Let the child take a deep breath through the nose and hold it for 4 seconds and let him exhale through the mouth. So, if the child cannot do it on command, then ask him to hold it, count, show the counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and tell him, oh, it's hot. Let's blow it off and make it cold. So, blow. So, inhale and blow. This is good for both speech, relaxation, mindfulness, and calming down the child a great deal. Another thing to develop interoception is talking about it. For a child, like we presented a cookie. So, bringing that awareness ki, what is this cookie? What color is it? How do you think it smells like? How do you think it tastes like? What will happen if you put it in your mouth? Do you want to eat it? Are you feeling hungry? Do you want to have water after cookie? So talking it out when a child obviously comes to a verbal level. Till he is not at a verbal level, you can use visual cards, or you can just keep on explaining if the child has enough receptive. Now the visual sense. Uh, Again, visual, as I told you, that it has a very strong impact on our whole sensory system and is pretty capable of shutting down rest of the systems. So, for an under-responsive child, he will be unaware to people and objects, and he will have difficulty locating things in a clutter. If I tell him that go take a ball from the box, toy box, it will be a huge task for him. Then difficulty at looking at items for completing. Often the give a worksheet and it's difficult for the child to complete it. Then he might have very limiting diets or brands because he is hooked on to that particular wrappers relate to the wrapper of the food, and you are not brand specific. He should be food specific. Food specific is still acceptable, though we try that the child should eat everything. But if there's a Marie biscuit, it can be of Britannia, it can be of Monaco, it can be of whatever XYZ companies. So it should just be a round biscuit which I can eat, and not that particular wrapper biscuit that I have to eat. For over responsive kids, they avoid eye contact, which is a huge issue with our kids. So, and that is usually because they are over responsive to the visual stimulus. So they cannot take it staring into somebody's eye and looking into the eye and talking. It's a little too much for them. So, and they might have peripheral gazing, like seeing from the corner of the eye. They enjoy these things. Closing the eye, they get upset by the bright light, and often they prefer dark rooms. For a sensory craver, they stare at the bright light and enjoy visual stimulation. They will like a lot of video games and everything. And for the screen time, the problem is that uh, the what was I saying? The kind of graphics, yes, the graphics that we have in these days is very different from what we used to have previously. These are very intense nowadays. And if you see the cartoons going back in time, what we used to see, they were not stressing our system as much as today's cartoons or movies they do. Even very highly stimulating movies, they are put into adult category simply because it is too much to take for the child. And for the same reason, we are advised that you should not see TV or you should not see mobile at least before half an hour or 1 hour before going to the bed, because they are so highly stimulating. For neurotypicals, it is so highly stimulating. Imagine for the neurodiverse child. So for a craver, he would like seek out flashing objects and moving objects and watch videos on repetition, because that graphics that is very, very stimulating to him. So how do we address this visual system? So we have to give, for an under-responsive child, we need to give him enough stimulations. We have to give him colorful balls. We can use that parachute activity, or we can use light and sound toys. We can use visual tracking exercises, showing them pictures on the wall through a projector, or we can even use sunglasses. For some kids, some shades are calming. For other kids, the other shades are calming. So you have to see even which shade of sunglasses is good for them. Then target throwing, or target hitting, or these activities are good for visual kids. Then visual perception activities, visual VMI activities, visual and talking to him. And another thing for visual you have to do is keep the things organized for an over responsive child. A child who is over responsive to visual stimuli will not like it if he has clutter in his house. So he will just keep on arranging things, and sometimes we find that the parents are like, he will just bring everything from the house and line it up in a single line. That is because he cannot take unorganization. It is so overpowering for him. Next is our auditory system. So for an under-responsive child with auditory system, he has problem responding to name call, and which we very often see. And he does not respond to verbal prompts also, hold slowly. For an over-responsive kids, he gets upset by the noises in the background. He wants to block them out, and so he makes noises for blocking them out. Previously, I used to think that a child is making noises because he's seeking that input, whereas it can be the other way also. The child is making noises because he wants to cut off the other sounds from the background, and the sound of the whistle, the sound of the car, the sound of the birds, they are not okay to me. So I will make a sound that is safe and secure for myself. So I'll make my own sounds. So I'll just start and want to block out all other senses. So this verbal stimming might actually be a response to oversensitivity or over responsiveness of the child to auditory system rather than seeking the input. For a sensory craver, he attempts to repeat sounds and objects again and again and again, and he holds objects up to ear, talks very, very loud, makes noises, and the same things. He turns the same things that you see in under responsive, you will find in sensory cravers, but the intensity, the magnitude, the frequency is way too high, and they just cannot get off it. The difference, how will you understand, is if it regulates the child, it is under responsiveness. If it doesn't regulate the child, it is sensory craving. So we need to give the input, but through a different exercise or through a different activity. So for auditory activities, what you can do is you can make sound boxes. You can make it at home easily. Just take any few, jars, plastic jars, and put different things which makes different sounds, and let the child differentiate. This is soft, this is muffled, this is high. And again, the first thing you have to take care of is your own sound. When we are talking to the child, we have to analyze whether he wants me to talk softly, whether he wants me to talk a little louder, whether he wants me to talk with modulation. Some kids do not respond if you talk to them in a flat tone, like, how are you? Come here, I'm telling you something. Look at this. This is so interesting. If you just modulate the sound, oh, wow, look at this. They suddenly respond because they need that input into their ears. And some kids, they do not like animated voices. They want a flat tone. So you have to judge according to your own child. Then sometimes a child with extreme over response has to be given headphones. When they have too much of sounds, create a corner in the house where they can just sit down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, cut down the noises and calm themselves down. Then comes the gustatory system. That is the taste. So for an under-responsive child, he will crave food. He will like very highly flavored food like spicy, bhujia, namkeen, and he mouths objects, fingers into his mouth. He has poor oral control, generally overstuffs his mouth while eating on his own, and prefers crunchy textures. Whereas an over-responsive child, he will just gag or vomit with different tastes and textures. This I'm coming to olfactory, but if a child does not like the smell, then also he will gag because they are interrelated. Usually, over-responsive children, they are very picky eater, and they become upset if the food is on the mouth or even on the face. And these kids, they hate brushing their teeth. So in this oral cavity, we actually have a lot of things working. We have tactile, we have gustatory, we have olfactory, we have vestibular, we have auditory. All these and tactile. So interoception also. Actually everything, proprioception also. So all the systems are working together in this small oral cavity. So if you think of brushing, it can be affecting auditory. If you're using a vibrating brush, it can be affecting the tactile. He's not liking the touch or he's liking the touch. It can be taste of the toothpaste. It can be the sound of the vibrating brush that disturbs him. It can be the pressure he's not liking. It can be the movement he's not liking. And it affects just everything. So think of it in a broad way that what can be the cause, and try eliminating it one by one so that you can know that, okay, this is the problem with my child. So for a sensory craver, he would just like extreme flavors and mouths almost everything. For an over-responsive child, it will be very difficult for him to eat in a noisy environment sometimes, or where there is smell of the food, so they become overwhelmed and overreact in a restaurant or a public place or a food court. So it just might not be the food ka taste, it can be the smell of the place, it can be the noise of the place. So what we can do is Can present the food in very small quantities. Instead of giving him a bowl full of dal, just give a spoonful of dal and ask him or encourage him to just taste it. Or and desensitization of oral system actually starts with your hands. So we first present the food to the child just to play with it, squish it, do anything with the food, and gradually move our way up. The other way is you can present the food in a gauge piece. So put the food piece in the gauge piece and just tell the child, just try, just put it to your lips or just put it between the teeth. And then if he wants, he can squeeze it so that he feels safe, that I don't have to deal with the food in my mouth. It's just that mummy will give it and take it out. I just have to taste it and not deal with the bolus part. That is again a problem. So, for an under responsive child, you have to give him crunchier textures, you have to give him more input. You might he might like vibrating toothbrush and overstuffing. So for them we have to limit the portion. We have to give him a small spoon maybe, so that he takes only a limited bite. For an over responsive kid, again, mix it with a tactile play. So present the food. It will take some time. New food introduction is difficult, and whenever you're introducing a new food, don't change everything suddenly. Change one aspect of the food, whether you change the color or you change the texture or you change the flavor. Changing everything all of a sudden, expecting the child to eat, he will not eat. Then for the under responsive kids, again, you can give chewy tubes to chew upon. And for the cravers, again, we have to address their whole system, seeing what is affecting them. For olfactory, the under-responsive kids, they smell objects and people, whereas over-responsive kids, they gag at the smell and they're very sensitive to sense. For a craver, he will just like extremely strong smells, whether it is good or bad. So again, we can introduce smell boxes for them. You can put various spices or essential oils in bottles and let the child smell. Keep coffee as neutralizer. After every smell, you just give coffee so that it neutralizes, and a new smell, when it is presented, he can relate to it. If he's too oversensitive, then try preparing the food at different durations of the time. Like if the child is in the park, try preparing it at that time so that he doesn't get too overstimulated and refuses to eat. Because if that smell gets overpowering for him, extreme sensitivity, you can go for odorless shampoos, odorless lotions. You get them these days. So coming to the last part, what is the role of parents in the whole thing? So first and foremost, think of your child as just a child. We have too much to deal with, but they have a little more than us to deal with. We are dealing with their tantrums and everything, but trust me, if you're addressing and understanding their sensory system, you're cutting down on 60 to 70% of the behaviors, of the tantrums, and of other problems also. A child who is regulated in the body will be regulated in the mind. I have personally seen this thing and experienced this thing, that just addressing the body systems or the sensory systems of my son has helped us develop his logical thinking, his expressions, even speech and language a great deal. Proprioception and vestibular, they are directly related to the vocal output of the child. And one more thing you need to keep in mind while giving proprioception vestibular is to give a rhythmic movement. When you swing the child, it should be in a particular motion which should be maintained. It shouldn't be like fast, then slow, then fast, then slow. No, maintain a rhythm that is very calming for the child as compared to this erratic movement. So, coming to the role of parents. So, first of all, think of the child as a child, and our kids already have delays. So, if you're talking of a 6-year old child, chronologically, he might just be at a 4-year who's already, confused about a lot of things that are happening. He's not able to understand what is happening in his system. And on top of that, if we tell him that do this, do that, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, so it can be very taxing for the child. Then what you have to do is think objectively. Going after this webinar, please go back to the material, think about it, and you can always get back to me. For 1 week the group is working, and otherwise also I'll be available. So think objectively as to what can be happening with my child, and you need to make notes what can be happening. I'll share the plan how to do it. So think objectively why a child is reacting that way, what happened before that, what happened after that. And I'm not talking of the ABC of behavioral therapy. I'm just talking as a normal parent for a normal child, that my child is behaving in a certain way. Is there something I'm missing? Is there something I need to look into? What changed in the environment? Was he hungry? Did he use the washroom? Did he need to use the washroom? So even those things have to come into consideration. And don't think from the emotional point of view. Think like you're thinking for someone else's child. Then maybe you can relate better. That if you see a child from a different eye, not from the parent's eye, then you can objectively think that okay, he's doing this, and he might be doing this because of that. So you have to change your point of view for your child rather than getting emotional and taking that behavior baggage on your head and on his head. So don't think in terms of behavior, think in terms of reactions, responses. The child is reacting and not negatively behaving, is not attentive. Is he in that enough arousal state that he can attend to the task? If not, let me first bring him to that level of alertness and then work with him. That is why we suggest that, give proprioceptive or vestibular activity if the child needs it before moving on to a tabletop task. Okay, one more thing I would like to share here is when we started with my son, we were actually working very rigorously with him. And over the period of time, he used to be calmed down after a rigorous workout. But over a period of time, what we realized it that he started getting hyper with working out, and I was just completely unable to figure out what is happening. So after going through obviously texts and literatures and talking, we came to know that now I know that my child gets overstimulated if I give him a rigorous workout. So even that is not good. I have to arouse the child's level, but only to the optimal level. If I do it beyond that, again that is going to a workout or after a rigorous activity, the child is not settling down or is getting hyper. Maybe he does not need that much amount of exercise or input. Maybe his system has come at par or is regulated for now at least, that he does not need that much of stimulation. He was enjoying it, he was doing it nicely, but why is he hyper now after such a rigorous workout? So because he was getting overstimulated, he did not need that much of stimulation. So you have to judge it for your own child. And nothing fits every you need to do to address the sensory system, and try to involve the child in choosing the activities. If he cannot be involved at this point of time, make a list of activities and then see which he is liking and getting regulated, not dysregulated, and which he is not liking at all. So cut down the list and get to a final list that these are the activities I need to do if my child is dysregulated. And gradually then involve him in levels are dropping down or I'm too high. He can pick up an activity and ask for help. Then teaching the child to self-regulate. It is our job. We have to teach the child self-calming strategies. It does not come on its own. So again, you need to arousal state, and green is where he feels okay. So you can put activity pictures beneath that, and he can just point out that I'm in red zone or I'm in yellow zone, and I need to come back to green zone. If he can figure out the activity well enough, if he cannot, then you have to judge and pitch in that time that this is the activity my child needs to do to come back to the green zone. And then finally, we have to go for mindful parenting. Appreciate your child for what he's doing rather than for what he's not doing. Don't pick on the errors only. He's doing a lot of things just to please you. It's very difficult for him. So appreciate. And don't think just my verbal appreciation will do the work when I'm thinking inside that, oh my God, my child is not doing this and not that. Your vibes work. Your vibes travel a long way. Your words will not, but your vibes will. And what you do is what they catch. What you say, they will not catch. So you have to be a good role model for them to follow. So, appreciate your child, play with them. Initially, let it be child led, and then you can take over. Involve them in decision making. Ask them, how do you feel after an activity? Put pictures wherever the child is not able to communicate. You can just put pictures and ask him, how do you feel? If he likes it, keep it for the next time. If he doesn't like it, chuck it off. Let his decision be respected. And doing something wrong, that suppose an apple and a banana and you want the child to pick up apple. So as soon as he puts the finger on banana, we are like, no, this is not apple. So instead of that, we have to say, this is banana, this is apple. You have to take out that no, no, this is not right. We can do, you have to offer, do not throw. Instead of that, you can say, put it on the table, or put it in your hand, put it in the kitchen. So you have to rephrase all your comments and be very thoughtful in saying what you're saying. A no is a little too much for the child. He's already dealing with a lot, and on top of that, if you add failure by saying no, it can be very devastating for the child. So get into their shoes and think that, what should I say that I would like to be heard? If I did some mistake, would I like to be heard? Oh my God, what did you do? This is not done this way. Or would I like to hear that, okay, but we can correct it. Let's correct it and let's write it another time. So these are two different things, but this will change a whole lot of things. This will build on a cordial relationship, and this will change your perspective for the child's perspective for you. Often, the children do not like to be with mothers. They prefer fathers' companies, because mothers are no fun for them. The mothers are only doing activities. Let's do this, let's do that. You did not do this, you did not do that. But father is like, let's enjoy. So you have to add the fun element. So observe your child, observe and recognize what is happening in their body. And even if you don't get the activity done, it is okay. It is about the child's reaction that matters, his happiness that matters. But again, I'm not in favor that he should just be happy and do nothing. You have to strike a balance. But don't push him where he is performing the task, but say that, have fun with your child. They also have a lot on their plate. We also have a lot on our plate. Let's just balance things out. Once you start having fun, I'm sure you'll see that they are learning a lot more than a structured activity throughout the day, which should be done. I'm not underestimating the value. I believe in scheduling, but don't forget to have at least half an hour or 1 hour of fun time with your child. I hope it was helpful for you all, and I'll be taking up the questions now. Okay. Okay, so the first question is, my son got hyperactive mostly in artificial light, and when he see moving objects, how can I treat him? So again, ma'am, he is probably getting too much information from the visual system. So try to do the activities in natural light whenever possible. And when he sees moving objects, so this is again that visual sensory problem. What you have to do is you have to redirect the activities and trace. So you have to involve him in the activity, change the activity, get his attention. First, get his eye contact, his like visual tracking activities, get a remote control car, get a football that they can track, play with the ball games, catch and throw, and football, cricket. So all the visual tracking activities for a rotational movement, they work great. Corner eye problem, please address. Some say correcting vestibular will address. Some say show torchlights, visual stimulation, etc., which is evidence based. Ma'am, actually, it is related to both. As I told you, visual is directly related to the vestibular. So peripheral vision, it just might be giving them that visual vestibular input. That's why they're moving their head. Or it can be that they are over responsive to the visual stimuli. That is why they are cutting it off and giving it peripheral vision. So what you have to do is you have to try both the activities. Try giving him some vestibular input in the form of if you have swings, or if you have trampoline. If you do not have, make him do exercises, bending down, moving his head. If that makes him feel better and the peripheral gaze comes in the midline, so it is vestibular. If it does not, then go for the visual activities that are less stimulating. Go for some plain colors, wear some plain colors. They might just be too overstimulated by just the color of your dress. It is red or pink or green. So gradually build on it. uh, Try to keep the things organized in the environment. And whenever they are having peripheral gazing, you can do a tunnel vision. You can put the hands on both the sides of the eye of the child and then ask him to look. So giving him a tunnel vision also helps with peripheral vision. How to reduce impulsive behavior? I'm not getting that question. Okay. How to reduce impulsive behavior and learn the concept of control? Uh, Again, that we talked, ma'am, about the control. The child has to have some control over his schedule and over his activities. But if he is impulsive, then this is actually the psychology where the child psychology comes into play. That why is he feeling that way? Why is he feeling insecure, and why is he feeling unsafe? So more things have to be known for the child to comment on it. Actually, learn the concept of control. Again, I cannot comment randomly on this question unless I know what is happening with the child in the whole day. Or you go and sit down and analyze how is the child starting to react from the beginning. What happened with him during the day? Did somebody shout? Did somebody say something? Did somebody give him negative feedback which he's not able to take? Whether he has choice in his feeding, whether he has choices in his clothing, or he has no choice at all. So when you break down the factors, I'm sure you'll come down with one thing that is always jumping. So okay, as I said, he might be a craver. Now that we've gone through the webinar, please think and analyze, add on some vestibular input. If jumping is because of proprioception, add on the proprioception in different form. So jumping means he is indicating he needs that input, but you have to change the mode of input. How do we know how many times animal walks to be done in a day or any other exercise? Ma'am, how do we know? Entirely depends on the child. If your child is feeling uh, regulated after 2 walks, good. Some kids can do it for good 1 hour and still not feel satisfied. Then I will suggest you change the activity and then again try. So there is no fixed count or fixed number of times, and not even that it has to be done every day, since it can be fluctuating. One day the child might need it, the other day child might not need it. So you have to see and read his body language, read his gestures, and analyze whether my child needs it today or not. Like today my kid was jumping around a lot, too much. So I was like, okay, I need to give him some pressure today, so to get him settled down. But I don't remember last when I was giving him, we didn't do it for a lot many days. So every day you have to see him as a child with like a new day. You have to see him with a new vision and see what is my child's need today. And that is why this idea of having this webinar is to tell you and to make you analyze that what is happening and how it can be addressed. At what age we can introduce you move about his body parts without the fear of getting hurt or injured? Yoga can be introduced and as early as 3 years. Then my son 349 issues are licking every object, always restless, and throwing things. Okay, So licking every object non-edible, he is definitely seeking oral inputs. uh, Try giving him some crunchier foods, the more flavored foods, some namkeens or something, so that might satisfy his craving. And always restless and throwing things again, you have to see why is he restless and why is he doing that. We have to address the underlying cause, whether he's feeling restless from inside, as in there is some internal issue that's happening, maybe he's not feeling good. Did he use the washroom today? Did he do his potty today? Is he full? Is he hungry? Is he thirsty? These are the first things I would ask you to address. If none of this is there, then is he feeling hot? Is he feeling cold? Is it something that in the background the noise is disturbing him? If the smell is disturbing him, we have to uh, narrow down the things, because from here to we have to reach here. Why is the child restless? If medication is going on, that is making him restless. Now the temperature. For throwing things, he might just be seeking an auditory input. So I would, first of all, you have to tell him that whatever you're throwing, you are picking it back. So that is one aspect of behavior correction. And whatever he throws, he has to get back. And make it a rule that throwing is not acceptable. You have to put it on the table or on the chair. But since he's throwing, he might be seeking that auditory, satisfy his hunger for auditory needs before moving on to behavior correction. Hold hand and trying to scratch others sometimes. Running with flappy hands, spinning around the chair. Okay, so holding hand and try to scratch, running with the flappy hands and spinning around the system. Again, your child is seeking inputs for proprioception and vestibular both, and might as well be tactile. So I would advise that start doing exercises with him or activities with him that are addressing these things. Maybe you can start with joint compression, or you can start with hurdle jumps at home. You can start with stretching exercises. You can start with yoga. You can start with aerobics, dancing. And for as much the child will be involved in constructive activities, stimmings will also reduce. Stimming is nothing when they are self-stimulating themselves. So if we give them the right input from outside, their self-stimulations will decrease. So when he's spinning around the chair, maybe you can play musical chair together, or play tag, you catch me and I catch you. Start putting all those things into play. Or you can race with the child, that we go and touch. So there should be some constructive activity along with the input. He's holding hand and trying to scratch others sometimes. Give him textures, ma'am. Give him textures to feel. Sorry, sir. Give him a lot of tactile input, different textures to touch and feel. And if he's feeling scratchy, so he's asking for more input. Give him gym balls to squeeze. Teach him clenching of hands. Even clapping hands for some time is a good proprioceptive activity. So try replacing that itchy thing with the things that can be done. Make him rinse the towel, give him a sponge, and tell him, put him in water and tell him to squeeze it. This will give him both the tactile input also and the proprioceptive also. Continuous jumping on mattress, sofa, lack of concentration, attention, and not able to follow instruction most of the time. He's having audio filtering gap. Okay. See, sir, again, when it is not addressed, so the child cannot pay attention. My body is not in sync. How do I pay attention to a task? Something, when you have high proprioceptive needs or you're oversensitive, it is like tingling sensation on your skin, and I cannot concentrate with that. My body wants to move. I cannot concentrate on the task. So you have to first address, try crashing on the bed, or you can maybe try lifting weights, or giving him a deep pressure massage to control. And if that reduces the jumping, so again we are on the right track. We have to see how the child is reacting after every activity. Jumping is not satisfying, that is sensory craver. Give him another activity. with the same input or increased input, see if he's regulated, and you sort it. Lack of okay, we'll talk about it. Always seem to be hungry and eat something. Tough to make him sleep. Okay. Always seem to be hungry and eat something. Sir, if he is on a diet or something, I am not sure. So if he's on a diet, so that might be one factor, that he's not getting enough input in his mouth. And if he is getting, then it can be because the interoception is not working properly. So you have to give small amounts of food and tell him that, okay, we eat this, and make a chart for his eating, that you get to eat this in this duration, and after 2 hours you will get this, because it has to be regulated by us, and involve him in some activity meanwhile, because if he's not doing anything, then he will just like to eat. And if both of the factors are not there, then I will suggest you talk to a pediatrician. It can be a thyroid issue also, or if he's on a medication, some medications do make kids feel hungry. So tough to make him sleep and sleeping. Not sure if this is fine at this age. Sorry, what is the age of the child? Okay, 4 years, 9 months. No, it is not at all difficult, because I lost the question. Okay, for 4 years and 9 months, 8.5 to 9 hours a day is that much he should be sleeping. So not this is a very multifaceted thing. You just cannot think of one thing and address the system. If sleep is disturbed, again we have to see whether the child is hungry, whether the child is feeling cold, whether the child is feeling hot, whether the child is not tired enough to sleep. Maybe because even if you think that he has done 2 hours of activity in a day and he should be nicely sleeping, that 2 hours was just not enough for him. He did not get enough workout in those 2 hours, which could make him sleep if there are no other related issues like diet or medication or other hormonal issues. So, if ruling that out, there is no medical concern, then the child is energy is not channelized enough to make him sleep for that duration, or the temperature is not right. He might not be liking the feel of the bed sheets, he might not be liking the feel of the quilt, or sometimes, just 10 minutes of weighted blanket helps a lot, helps the child to unable to read or write, still on scribbling mode in terms of writing. Okay, so I don't know if you've been taking any therapies or any guidance from the experts as yet or not, because for 4.9, yes, these issues should have been addressed. At least toilet training should have been done. If he is not understanding, now how is the receptive language of the child? If the understanding is fine and if he's still doing it, so again we have to see, okay, why is he doing it? Maybe putting him on a visual schedule, or putting him on pecs might help, so that the understanding can be developed. And unable to read or write, reading I'll still pass it, but till this stage at least they should be able to write small bits. Pattern tracing should be there, and even alphabets should be there, but alphabets I can still pass. Pattern tracing should be there. So sir, please see to it. I don't know the full background. So his gross motors, his fine motors, his sensory, his everything has to be looked. Not just one thing cannot address the whole thing, the whole problems. Tend to make dough out of everything possible, especially paper and cards, by using them and putting them in water. Okay. So he is just enjoying a form of sensory play. Actually, he's just seeking that input, that if I put it in water and everything rolls down, he's seeking that input. So give him those squeezy balls, give him. And you have to, with this child, you have to work through playway. If you get through playway with him, I think it will be better and it will be more helpful to connect. First of all, you have to work on building that relationship with the child, which I don't think is existing. So first build on the relationship so that the child is ready to listen to you. We have to address the first tasks: eye contact, name call, imitations, his gross motor skills, his fine motor skills, his sensory system, his diet, his medications. If these 8 things are sorted, then we can think of progressing academically or something. So he does a lot of self-talking, talking about rhymes, dialogues of his favorite. So probably, check on the routine, because in this lockdown period, there is a lot of free time with the kids. So these are just forms of stimming that are coming out. So if he's doing a lot of self-talking, that means that he's just doing that sensory stimulation, stimming himself. So you have to involve him in meaningful conversation, as in you need to talk with the child. If he's saying something, you have to take it forward. If he's singing a rhyme, you sing with him, uh, go on singing with him. And then when you get that attention, then you tell him ki, okay, suppose it was Johnny. So okay, who ate the sugar? Johnny ate the sugar. You have to take the sit in another corner and do his own activity. No sense of road safety issues and other safety concerns. So the issues, then we can start tackling it. So I would advise, if you're not yet got the assessments or proper psychological and the OT and everything assessments done, please get it done. And that will give you a track as to where to start. And if you want to get in touch with us, we still have our consultations free till 10th April. So you can talk to us, and then I can guide you better, because randomly it is very difficult putting pieces together. I also need to know a lot of things about the child. When I go for an assessment, I ask for their videos, I ask for the complete histories. Without knowing these things, it will not be right on my part also to just comment randomly on the child. But with so many issues, yes, definitely we need to say, yes ma'am, you can. My kid is hyper, how to calm her and focus on activities? Ma'am, again, I need to know, why is the child hyper? Is she understimulated or is she overstimulated? Like I talked of overstimulation. So even that can make the child overstimulated. If she is not getting enough to do in the day, or if she's getting a lot to do in the day, both of them will make the child hyper. Secondly, the diet, plays a huge role. The gut issues, the I will look into proprioception and vestibular. So I'll address those first, and that should probably calm her down. So please see to it whether she needs more activities of those two things, or she needs less activity of those two things. Please address hair brushing also. See, hair brushing, ma'am, again, you have to desensitize the child. If a child is not ready to get touched, so you cannot directly put a vibrator there and go about it. You can, it's not that you cannot, but it will be taxing for the child. So I prefer going slow. I'll first go with my fingers, then I'll go with the towel or something with different texture cloth, then I'll go with a soft comb, and finally progress to a harder brush. So it has to go stepwise. And please start with the first step rather than jumping to the last step. Vibrations are always the last thing for desensitization and not the first thing. My son gets hyper when there is change in things. He cries a lot and screams a lot. What to do? He want to he want the things the way he wants. So this is the control thing that we were talking about. You need to see for the other psychological factors as well, what is happening with the child in a day. If he's way too controlling, that means there is some hidden insecurities or some things which are not making him feel right, and he wants to control everything else. Maybe he doesn't have enough choices in food, maybe he doesn't have enough choice in clothing, maybe he doesn't have choice in what activity he wants to do. You should be doing activities, but it's okay to give the child some choice, that I want to do this activity or that activity. So give him some control and take out some control. So you have to do that. And both ways it is bad. The child is way too controlling, also is insecure, and the child does not want to participate, is less awareness. So a little more details on the child will help me understand. You can just put it up in the group. Be visual stimming, because our kids like funny faces, but depends on the age of the child. For a 2 to 3 year old child, some sort of laughing and blushing seeing the mirror is absolutely normal. But if it is everything depends on the intensity, magnitude. Maybe get involved with her. You also start making funny faces. If she likes funny faces, you make it rather than mirror. Turn her to your side. If she's not willing, first make funny faces in the mirror, and gradually take her attention and turn her towards your side, and involve her, because this is clearly stimming. You can just let it be to a certain extent. Stimming cannot be completely eliminated. It can be redirected, as I've already said, but a certain amount we can permit, if as long as it is not harming and it is socially acceptable. But if it interferes with the child's routine or activities, we need to address it. My daughter is 3 year old. Whenever we try to tell her something which she don't like, she started putting everything in her mouth. How can we correct her behavior? Sir, maybe you need to change to the conscious discipline thing that we talked about, because every child responds better to positivity. So if maybe just think about it. I'm not sure if it is happening, but think about it. If you're just telling her, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, she's having too much of no throughout the day. So the child has to react some way. She has just started putting things in her mouth. If you rephrase the sentences that come, let's do this thing, and instead of that, maybe she will listen to you and you might see the change in behavior. So I always say, before going in for behavior correction of the child, please, we need to go for the behavior correction of the parents, because we as parents, we are making a lot of mistakes unknowingly and we don't realize it. And we have to go for mindful parenting and conscious discipline before expecting the kids to react the way we want them. All my 12 points. I put my 12 points on top. Please respond whenever possible. Thank you very much. Samrat, sir, if it is possible, please put the queries in. Can we teach self-regulation to 3 year old? Yes, you can teach self-regulation to a 3 year old. That depends on what is the receptive language of the child. If he is responding to verbal language well, then you can teach verbally. If not, then you can use visual cards to regulate and let him make a choice. So you can teach self-regulation to a 3 year old. My son likes running a lot, so how to utilize his running interest to regulate him? Okay. See, if running is regulating him for, say he runs for half an hour and he's regulated, it's fine. And you can play with him, you can play tag with him, you can play catch the thief, you can probably play cricket with running, you can play football, you can play racing, hurdle jumps. But if the running is not regulating him after a certain amount of time and you feel him getting disoriented or dysregulated or hyper, then you need to change running with something else, maybe jumping or crashing or massages or something else. We need to look into it. I could not identify in which category my son falls. It's difficult to say, ma'am. That is why I'm saying that, after the webinar, there's a whole lot of information. So please go get back. And the child might be over uh, responsive in one thing and can be under responsive in the other thing, can be a craver in a third sense. So it can be a very good permutation combination. But sit down and write. This is for everybody. Sit down and write that what you're seeing in your child, and whether it is over or it is under or it is craving, and accordingly choose the activities which can address it. Same issue with me. So confusing for new parents. Yes, ma'am, totally, I understand, and we are here for the support. So but I would seriously urge all of you to go back, sit down and write down the issues that you're facing and why do you think that you're facing. So I'm available and I'll help you out with whatever best I can. Some of his behaviors come under. Yes, it's pretty normal. None of us have a single sensory system. We don't have only over and we don't have only under. We have mix. So it's absolutely normal. My son has both under and over responsive proprioception. Sorry, I lost the question. Okay. My son has both under and over responsive proprioception, rough playing and right slightly. If I address both with respective activities provided, yes, it will help, ma'am. Because we have mixed sensitivities, we have fluctuating sensitivities. So accordingly, that is why I'm saying that sensory is very dynamic. You cannot address it with a set goals or set activities. You have to choose according to the child, according to that moment, according to that day. So try addressing it, and if you need any help, I'm there. 2-3 senses at a time. So we will try to take in the activities which help you address the issue. So if it is just writing or if it is rough playing, so I will give him both a massage and a tactile rub on the hands so that pressure. So we have to decide what to do. You can handle multiple at a time. It's not that you should be handling just one. Again, depends on the child. What should we do at unnatural laugh? Ma'am, unnatural laugh, either we need to look into dietary factors. It can be due to yeast overgrowth also, and if not, it can be a form of stimming. So again, see when your child is laughing and how often he's laughing, what is the duration, and if you take away that particular thing, the laughing stops. If you have given him something to eat and after that he starts laughing, so first analyze what is making him laugh. Okay, list of, yeah, sure, you can message me after the webinar and we can discuss more. Thanks for the input. My questions are, how do I make my sensory seeker kid ready for tabletop activities? He's a proprioceptive and vestibular seeker. Ma'am, again, seeker, seeker, we have already discussed there are two types of seekers. There is under responsive kids and there are cravers. So first clarify whether the child is under responsive or the child is a craver. And before getting him to a tabletop activity, give him good amount of proprioceptive and vestibular activities so that he feels regulated, and then make him sit. And you have to also see to it how much time can he pay attention. If a child's attention span is 15 minutes, please don't expect him to sit for 1 hour. So see how much he can remain regulated, and gradually the sitting tolerance will increase as his sensory system will get regulated. Whether vestibular over responsive of craver under responsive, the sensory activities remain the same. No. If the child is vestibular over responsive or craver under responsive, see the activities swing is the same, but how you are swinging, how much you are swinging, at what speed you are swinging, that changes according to whether the child is a seeker or an avoider. If he is a seeker, we start with little maybe wider and faster, and bring it down to rhythmic. We ultimately have to bring it to a rhythmic swing. And if a child is over, so we have to start with very small swing pendulum. So the activity might be same, but the intensity and the way you're doing the activity cannot be the same. Kid is always jumping and shaking his head and head rotating with peripheral vision, which looks very odd. What can be done? Ma'am, address his vestibular and proprioceptive. My son most of the time has one finger on his left eye, pulling it downwards and head tilted towards left side. With the other right finger, he closes the right ear. How to replace? Uh, if you've ruled out any medical issue, if there's no medical issue, so It just might be one thing. Have you tried giving him? But first, rule out the medical issue. I'm not sure if there's a medical issue involved here. We're trying hand over hand activities, especially with writing, how to build his confidence to make him write on his own. I know he knows to write numbers and letters, but he still needs my touch. For confidence building, we need conscious discipline and we need mindful parenting. So you have to appreciate the child, and by appreciation, an applaud or an appreciation or a sticker or a smiley, those should be the rewards I prefer with the kids. So again, you've not mentioned the age of the child. If the child is still young, it's okay to have that touch. That depends on the age of the child. And for building confidence, maybe he's getting overcorrected at times, so he's not able to develop that confidence that whether I'm doing a right or wrong. My mother is maybe telling me a lot many times that you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. So maybe overcorrection is happening. So just you can get back on this key, what is happening. 3.3 years always chewing chewy tube, silver locket in his change and likes animal crawls, wall pushes, wheelbarrow walks, and uh, lift the weights. So heavier activities for that if it is not getting addressed only by activating TMJ. Impulsive, as in he not control himself and will switch on and then immediately off. Ma'am, again, I would like to emphasize this thing that we are only focusing on correcting the children and we're not focusing on correcting ourselves. So we need to evolve as parents first before we expect the kids to be well behaved and correct. So every time you're telling him, don't switch on the light, can it be just that let him switch on the light and ignore, and maybe he'll not do it next time? Or you can maybe tell him ki, okay, instead of switching on the light, let's sit here and do some activity, finger painting or something, if he's liking that finger wala touch. So give him finger painting on something, like let's do tap 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 here. So you have to replace it and you have to be more positive towards him to make him react. So please everybody, let's just go back and think that if our parenting needs some changes, and if it does, accept and change, there's no harm, it will be all for good. We are seeing a lot of teeth grinding. I've already tried oral massaging on inside and outside. He uses the red chewy stick. He eats lots of crunchy food, but the issue still persists. Okay. How about the oral sensory issues of, obviously he uses a red, he eats a lot of lunch. So it is obviously under responsive child. So for his case, I will recommend vibrations, and you can do it with the vibratory toothbrush, or you can get a toothed and a vibrator, and you have to give massage on the gums, on the wood, and you have to activate the TMJ. Red chewy stick is actually might not be providing him enough proprioception, so go for the green ones. And you can also ask the child to say e ah e, say for 5 to 10 times, seeing upon the reaction of the child. So that again activates your TMJ. If that still doesn't solve the problem, give him some whole body proprioceptive activities and then try massaging his mouth, and it should reduce stimulations. So make him stand on different textures mats, not walking, just standing. So let him keep his feet stand for 10 counts on one mat, then go on to the other. And depending upon the texture that he's responding to, if he's not doing, and if he's doing toe walking on soft surfaces, then start from the hard surfaces, let him stand on the hard ones, then decrease the hardness and go to the soft ones. The other way can be that you take few textures and you rub on his feet. If since it's coming back, so I'm assuming there should not be any structural issues or the muscle tendon issues, shortening of the tendons involved. So rubbing and providing him that tactile input on the soles should help you resolve. And you can also go for activities like skating, and let him wear shoes whenever possible. Don't let him go barefoot. Kid always cries as soon as he wakes up, which happens daily, and he also had a lot of food intolerances. You've taken some dietary plan from an expert. So please follow that first. And sleep disturbances should also be addressed with a change in diet. And maybe he is, not getting enough nutrition, or maybe feeling hungry whenever he wakes up. So please see whether he's getting enough input and enough food. And if you have changed the diet, so that might be very disturbing, give him some time. If that is not resolved, then we will look into other factors. Lot of visual seeking, likes to watch wheels, fans, anything that spins. Also he goes into circles whenever he sees fans and when he's free. So again, the same thing, ma'am. See, some form of stimming will always happen, and if it is only for a limited amount of time, it's absolutely okay. We can ignore, we cannot snatch away everything from our kids, because this is again a way of self-regulation. Acceptable to me if he's doing it, say, like 5 minutes in a day, 10 minutes in a day, it's okay, ignore. And if it is continuing, then you have to join in. You have to give less free time. You have to make him scheduled. You have to get a routine set for him, and involve him in play activities that can also satisfy his hunger. For visual seekers, you can go for a lot of colorful activities, finger painting, stimulations to the eyes, colors way, paints way, parachutes, light and sound toys, then trackings, uh, laser light tracking, remote car control cars. So increase those sorts of activities in the child's day. My son always interested in moving objects, and it is so from so long. What are the alternates? I just talked about it. If that doesn't resolve, please get back to me. Could not move his tongue in all directions, can't lick honey, low, 2.2-year-old. So could not oral motor, but he is verbal with 10 or 15 words. 1, 2. Okay, could not imitate oral motor, but he is verbal with 10 to 15 words, want to increase more. Yeah, this is completely the oral motor part, and I address it in oral placement therapy. So for first, we have to teach the child to blow and develop his imitations since he's 2.2. So how are his gross motor imitations? Start with the gross motor imitations, build on the fine motors and the oromotors. Then as for moving the tongue in all directions, it's okay for his age. If he can lateralize the tongue, that would be fine. In another 6 months, he should be able to take the tongue up and down. And could not lick honey. The same thing. So can't lick means he cannot move the tongue up and down. So you can make him exercise, take something and put it on the palate up and ask him to touch. Same thing, down, touch. Okay. So this exercise you can give for lateralization. Put something on the molars, chocolate or something. Ask him to start flowing. Touching eyebrows is a tactile issue. What can be done? So again, for how long is he doing that, and what is the frequency and intensity of doing it? So if he's just touching once in a while concentrating on a task, we also stim, we also move pens, and we also play with our hair, we also shake our legs. If it is happening only for concentration, and as long as it is not affecting the activity or social behavior, social acceptability, it's fine. He is not. My son, 3.3 years, doesn't have imitation. He couldn't imitate even very easy things unless we teach him. Parents, if you don't mind, can I just take up rest of the queries in the group? 980. I'm sorry, that's my son. Uh, will that be okay with everybody if I take up rest of the queries in the group? Because we have already exceeded a lot of time, and even my son is looking for my attention now. So please post rest of the queries in the group, and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much.